Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. 3 people arrested in targeted operations in St. James and St. Catherine. Opposition calls for the National Environment and Planning Agency NEPA to be made independent. And later in sports, reggae girls take on South Africa in friendly international at the Montego Bay Sports Complex. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kerry Simpson. Here are the details. 3 people were arrested following this morning's coordinated targeted operations by the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency MOCA. A mother and daughter were arrested during one of the operations in Montego Bay, St. James, while another person was arrested at a private residence in Garveymead, Portmore, St. Catherine. Director of Communications at MOCA, Major Basil Jarrett, says charges will be formally brought against the 3 shortly. The operations, which involved MOCA agents and operational support from the Jamaica Constabulary Force, saw teams going to 2 locations in Montego Bay and Portmore about 5 o'clock this morning in search of persons suspected to be involved in a major fraud investigation at a government entity. Now, it's understood that the search and seizure operations yielded electronic device, among other items. A member of the clergy wants more collaboration with state agencies and the church to protect children against deviant sexual behavior. It comes in the wake of a recent incident involving a group of teenaged boys who assaulted a 13-year-old girl.
Bishop Reverend Al Bailey says he's disturbed by the incident, but not surprised because, as a nation, we've been here before.
This is no new phenomenon to Jamaica. As a matter of fact, there was a time when the dancehall used to be very prevalent for things like these, or known for practices like these, or promoting practices like these. That has somewhat toned down. The long-distance daggering and ensure if those persons who understand those developments that were happening in dancehall were done by students and youngsters, but dancehall seemed to take a position against it.
He wants the Ministry of Education to do more to protect children from deviant sexual behavior. Parents and guardians, he adds, also have an important role to play.
It's time for the constituted authority, the Ministry of Education, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, SOCA, and the children advocate organizations to come together and form an institution that will look into these kinds of sexual deviance among students, because they are the ones who are becoming adults. They are our future, and I believe they need guidance.
And what about the church?
We have, for example, doing devotions in school. We have crusade in schools. We have advancing the cause of Jesus Christ in schools, all because we want to get to the bottom of this kind of social underbelly that is wreaking havoc on our moral standards and ethical principles in our society.
Reverend Bailey says while it's important for the victim in this latest incident to get psychological support, the accused teens in this matter also need intervention. Nekinski Robinson, TVJ News.
The opposition is again calling for the National Environment and Planning Agency NEPA to be made independent. This follows NEPA dropping the charges against Tradewinds Citrus Limited for the pollution of the Rio Cobre in December 2023. Opposition leader Mark Golding says such a pivotal agency should not be under the Super Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation.
Which is not serving the best interests of the public of Jamaica. Environmental protection needs to be independently pursued. It cannot be subordinated to short-term growth-inducing strategies. And as long as it continues like that, this sort of thing will be allowed to happen, because they will not be able to pursue with the necessary fixity of purpose and single-mindedness of purpose their statutory mandate. It will be compromised by the other prerogatives of the ministry in which they are located. It must be fixed.
The flash flood warning, which remains in effect for eastern and south central parishes until later this afternoon, has left some Clarendon residents reeling from the effects of heavy rains yesterday afternoon. The weather have left houses and roads underwater, and residents are calling for fixes to address the constant flooding problems.
Floodwaters from heavy rains on Thursday have locked several residents in southern Clarendon in their homes like prisoners. They told TVJ News that this is a regular occurrence and are tired of complaining to their elected representatives. The residents say it's as if their repeated calls have fallen on deaf ears. In this video obtained from one of the residents, the floodwaters covered her toilet.
If you want to know how far the water is, there is 2 drum at the side, and see there the water cover the drum. See, you just see the top of the drum, so you know, and see there on the outside, see it almost reach to the window.
A resident of the Money Musk housing scheme in Hayes, Odika, says the situation is bad in her area.
There are 6 houses on the lane. 3 were completely flooded. One had water almost all the way through it, and it was just me and my direct neighbor. I live at the end, just me and my direct neighbor who didn't have much water in the yard.
She says the issue is compounded by a man-made pond in the scheme, which overflowed its banks. The Member of Parliament for South East Clarendon and Minister of Labour and Social Security Pernell Charles Jr. says at least 3 families are at a shelter in Rocky Point due to the rains.
I've instructed the team to do an island-wide assessment for all parish managers and parish offices to be activated to ensure that we can reach with our network into the communities and identify persons who need support. I know that already in Portland, you have the parish office going out with mattresses where they are necessary. And I know that for Clarendon, for instance, Mr. Royal has already called to say that the team is up and running this morning to try and identify where support is needed.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
It's time for a break. Stay with us, more local stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. The St. Mary Police are reporting that the parish is doing very well in its fight against crime. Speaking at a recent JTA meeting, Deputy Superintendent in charge of Zone 2, Romeo Henry, revealed that overall major crimes are down in the parish.
This time, for example, we had like about 34 murders in the entire St. Mary division, 34 murders. But this year we are reporting that we are 9 less, so we are at 25 murders. 9 less, or if you do the maths for percentage, it's about 26% decrease in murders. And
In the meantime, DSP Henry shared safety tips going into the festive season.
we are saying you must beware. He said always walk with friends or in a group if possible, and this sounds to me more like the pedestrians. All right? Tell your parents and friends where you are and when you will be home. Keep to crowded, well-lit areas. Stick to the routes you know well. Stay alert. Tune in to your surroundings wherever you are. Stand tall and walk confidently. Don't show fear. Don't look like a victim. Trust your instincts. If you feel uncomfortable in a situation, leave right away and get help if needed.
A new look St. Anne. That's the promise from the newly installed Custos of the parish, Joseph Issa. As you'll hear in this report from O'Shane Masters, the Prime Minister has also promised to upgrade the road network in the parish to address productivity concerns.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says any effort to drive economic activity must be coupled with investment in infrastructure. He laments that thousands of man-hours that could be used to increase productivity are wasted sitting in traffic. He says his administration must turn its attention to ensuring the road network is developed.
The pivot has to be in accelerating our investment in infrastructure. The stretch of road along here is notorious for traffic. And I can just imagine, as I'm speaking, how you must be reflecting on that with your own experiences. And I wish to say, since I have you for another 5 minutes as a captive audience before the rain comes down, to tell you that the government has already started the work in developing this corridor into a highway. These investments take time, but you will appreciate when I say that they take too long. And the excuse that it must take time is just that, an excuse. As a nation, we must embrace efficiency.
Meanwhile, Custos of St. Anne, Joseph Issa, says the vision for the parish is a transformative one, which will include its attractiveness to investors and visitors alike. This will be done through a number of projects over the short to medium term, including improving the road network.
One of the plans involves the rejuvenation of the waterfront that has so much meaning and respect for all our vital fishermen, other treasured parishioners, and of course, regional and international visitors. The upgrade will include a revamped marina for yachts and small boats, among other features. Another project will see Ocherius and Reynolds ports expanded to accommodate a total of 6 ships, thus increasing visitor traffic and by extension, a much-needed boost to the economic growth for all of the parish.
Also on the agenda is the revitalization of the market. Mr. Issa says the projects are not fantasies, but are on the way to realization with plans already drafted. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
It's now time for the Business Minute.
The country's trade deficit, the difference between merchandise imports and exports, is now at $3.3 billion for the January to July period. Now, imports dipped by 2% to $4.35 billion, while exports stumbled by 9.8% to $1.09 billion. Oil accounted for $1.2 billion or 28% of total imports, while raw materials and intermediate goods accounted for $1.18 billion or 27%. Over the review period, the country spent $1.13 billion or 26% on imports of food and consumer goods. Imports of capital goods were valued at $492.8 million, while imports of transport equipment were valued at $348.7 million or 8% of total imports. Further afield, the Federal Trade Commission FTC has launched a sweeping antitrust investigation of Microsoft. The agency has ordered the tech giant to hand over information to assist in its probe. This is far from the first antitrust concerns the company has faced. Microsoft recently defended itself to the FTC over its $69 billion acquisition of video game publisher Activision Blizzard. European officials also considered investigating the company over its partnership with OpenAI, though that probe never materialized. The newest investigation might be short-lived. For the Business Minute, I'm O'Shane Masters.
And we take another break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, the government of Antigua and Barbuda is to put more resources into tackling the spike in non-communicable diseases. The Twin Island state is confronting significant public health challenges as cases of non-communicable diseases including obesity, cancer and cardiovascular ailments continue to rise. The government has pledged to combat the growing prevalence of NCDs through a combination of healthcare measures and public education. Among the measures announced are the resuscitation of the cancer center, expansion of dialysis services to accommodate more patients, and creation of a cardiology treatment center to offer specialized care for people with heart conditions. On the international scene, the Israeli military has warned Lebanese citizens not to return to 60 villages in the south of the country 3 days into a ceasefire after more than a year of fighting with the Shia-armed group Hezbollah. The Israel Defense Forces published a map showing a swathe of territory several miles deep, which it said residents must not return to. Anyone who did, it said, would be putting themselves in danger. More than 1 million Lebanese have been displaced by the fighting, mostly from the south. Tens of thousands of Israelis have also been displaced. The truce came into effect on Wednesday morning, though officials in Israel and Lebanon have accused each other of already breaching it. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Nikinsky Robinson.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Carrie-Ann Simpson. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.